An emergency fund is basically your liquid savings, money you can easily access when life throws you a curveball. It's not wealth that's tied up in investments or locked away in real estate. It's cash, plain and simple, like the money sitting in your bank account. But have you thought about how it could change at every stage of your life? Let me explain. When you're a child, you probably don't need an emergency fund. In fact, this might be the only time in your entire life when that's true. Your biggest emergency might be needing an emergency snack from 7-Eleven. But everything changes once you hit your 20s. Maybe you have your first job and some real expenses now. This is when starting an emergency fund makes a lot of sense. Generally, the rule of thumb is that you should have between 3 to 6 months of essential expenses in cash. This should cover emergencies like job loss, unexpected expenses like repair costs if your car breaks down, or unforeseen medical expenses. If you're still living at home in your 20s or have roommates, your expenses might still be pretty reasonable. You might be okay with having as little as 3 months of your essential expenses in the bank if you have an interruption to your income because you don't have many significant responsibilities yet. As you move into your 30s, however, life often starts to get a little more complex. Maybe you don't have roommates anymore or you have a mortgage. At this point, you might be thinking about starting a family, or maybe you already have kids. All of these factors mean you'll likely need a larger emergency fund. At this stage, many people have closer to that 6 months of expenses in the bank for that extra peace of mind, and some may even have more than that. As your life gets more complex and responsibilities increase, your emergency fund often grows along with it. When you reach your 40s and 50s, your emergency fund will still typically be within that 3 to 6 months of expenses range. If your income is much higher than your expenses, or if you have multiple streams of income, maybe you have a full-time job, some rental properties, and you're a small business owner, you might feel comfortable having a smaller emergency fund. On the flip side, if you have high expenses like kids in college, you might want to aim for a higher amount. Then we get into your 60s and beyond. At this stage, one's emergency fund becomes very personalized. I've met people who feel comfortable just having a certain dollar amount in the bank. Maybe it's $100,000, maybe it's even $200,000. I've even seen some people keep well over $1 million in cash, which has its own trade-offs, but it's their personal choice. Some people just like seeing a certain number on their bank statement to sleep well at night. For them, it could be over 12 months or even multiple years worth of expenses. But I've even seen the complete opposite. I've met a woman in her 80s who, even though she could afford to be more cautious, chooses to keep just 3 months of expenses in cash. She just doesn't like her cash sitting idle and wants her money working for her. In the end, how much you want to keep in your emergency fund is up to you, but taking into consideration where you are in life is a good place to start. Thanks for watching.